Hello, sweet friends, and welcome to the way through. I am your host, Bonnie Worth, and so incredibly grateful to have another opportunity to dive into some deep and meaningful conversation with you. Today's topic is one that sits really close to my heart. And when we look at this being able to speak our truth, the courage to speak truth, to look, we carry stories of pain, of joy, of growth. I mean, stories that really are hidden beneath all those layers of fear and shame, the trauma. But it really comes into it, even though we might know on a conscious level, or we've, participated in different programs or retreats or things like that. We've been to a speaking event, or we've read a book, whatever it is. There are so many people that encourage this speaking our truth, sharing the stories. But why is that so hard for us? Well, that's our conversation here today, because it's more than just an act of bravery. It's much deeper than that. And it's about creating that space for that communication, that space that isn't just about what we're doing within our little human expressions, but at that deeper level inside of us, of being able to have really moved into those deeper reservoirs where that vulnerability feels impossible and that silence is super uncomfortable. So how we go into that, and again, it comes back to everything. It's looking at what have we inherited based on our conditioning, what sits there within the paradigms and belief systems, and more importantly, what do we believe we're worthy of. So again, if this speaks to you, then today's show, you're in the right place. So why is it so hard to speak our truth? Well, the difficulty comes because there is a complex web of, we could say, emotional barriers, all of that which is intertwined within the psychological aspects of our little human. The little human being this person who is in fear, who has been through a lot of wounding and has a complicated relationships, and doesn't feel safe within maybe their own skin. All of those things are that's interwoven. So there's a psychological, what we believe on a conscious level, what's running within the operating system, within the subconscious, and then looking at those emotional factors that can keep us feeling trapped, and where it almost feels impossible to begin to share our truth. It's interconnected, from fear to belief to the past experiences, the what we've inherited based on this lifetime, other lifetimes, looking at the familial conditioning that sits there. All of it creates this formidable obstacle, an obstacle towards what is vulnerability. And I know for my own self that vulnerability, feeling safe, was the ultimate for me. Feeling safe and being safe are completely different experiences. We can be safe. We can be safe amongst friends. We can be safe around, with our loved ones, your spouse, your partner, your kids. You can be safe with them. But to feel safe is completely different. Feeling safe to speak the deeper truth inside of us, feeling safe that we won't be judged or criticized in some way for what we believe. Being safe in the world, I mean, we can look at it in terms of even some of the, our day-to-day things where we are in more of protection, or there are things that support our safety in the world, systems that have been created to be safe. And so we're fortunate, even within the countries in which we live, there is a scope of safety that we've become accustomed to. Now, does that mean it's going to hold up forever? Well, no. I mean, I think we can only look to what's happening in the world to kind of get the sense that perhaps our safety is being threatened. But being safe in the world is completely different. It comes with all kinds of complexities with that too. What I'm talking about being safe, it comes closer to home, safe inside of our homes. And I mean, are there exceptions to everything? Of course there are. So for those of you tuning in, please don't come in and say, well, Bonnie, sometimes somebody can break into your house and so you're not safe anymore. I mean, there are all kinds of variables in here. We've got we've got a structure and a framework that allows us to be safe, though, right? Where we've created those experiences that maybe, or experiences of life that really help us to feel more, to be or be safer in our lives. But to feel safe, and that's the difference. To feel safe means is something that's really big. Feeling safe in our skin, feeling safe to be vulnerable, feeling safe in terms of expressing our truth, feeling safe in terms of moving into new relationships, all of those things, because what is sitting at the forefront is this obstacle to vulnerability. So as an example here, if you are someone, when we look at, some of those primary components, if you are someone who was betrayed by someone that you love, you're going to, as a result, you might have a fear that the pain of what you've experienced is going to lead to further rejection or even abandonment. If you are a child, and you maybe were neglected or you were abused in some way, there are some internalized messages and that come about where your feelings are invalid, or that your voice doesn't matter, which can discourage you at the unconscious level from sharing your truth, from speaking out. So those unresolved wounds are what shape our perceptions, making us feel that if we open up, if we share our truth, if we express ourselves in some authentic way that goes against maybe other people's expectations, or even where we look at what we've experienced in the past, what we're measuring of how we were hurt in the past, means that it may result in this fear of being hurt again. So we choose silence as a form of self-protection. Remember, we need to feel safe. And if we don't feel safe, then we're going to create these barriers that really lead us to choose silence over expression. So we can feel suppressed. We can look at this in terms of cultural experiences or societal norms, where, again, stereotypically, there may be this, even from, I would say, as a woman, where stereotypically there is a passivity, or we need to be submissive, or we need to suppress our emotions because we're too emotional, we're too reactive, we're too sensitive, all of those things that come with it. So here again, there's this pressure that can happen, to be calm, to be composed, to be agreeable. And so there creates this inherited conditioning that really prevents this expression of strong emotions, or being able, this to this fear of being perceived as being inappropriate or even weak. And so that's a conditioning that leads so many women to silence their authentic feelings, to conform in terms of some of those standards that are acceptable, or that are the consciousness of within the belief systems, those paradigms in terms of who a woman is, or how, what is right and acceptable in terms of how women express themselves in the world. Now, this can, I mean, and it's men and women. I'm just using that as an example. I mean, this is a big piece of it. But there is this, in what we've experienced in the past, and this pressure of conformity, that where we actually make the choice. Remember, I said it earlier, that we choose silence. We have choice, we have choice, we have choice. And every single time we choose to either express or go into silence, it is our choice. It is our choice, even though there's all of these external conditions. And the reason for that is because that choice, that autonomy, is something that we need to nurture and create from within. And we will sometimes make choice either through a conscious choice or a subconscious choice, which means we don't even recognize that we've made the choice to be silent. We don't even recognize that there are belief systems and paradigms that are operating underneath the system that are cautioning us away from being able to speak our truth. So as I said, there's also these other feelings that come up, that shame. The shame is such a big one, that internalized shame where maybe again, you're someone who has experienced betrayal or abuse or neglect. Honestly, well, it's not often. I'm gonna say it is often about some of the maybe actions that we've done in our life that maybe we feel embarrassed about or ashamed of, or those things we wish we hadn't said or done when we look back of maybe it was choices that we made out of naivety or reaction, and so we can feel shame over that. But the other side of shame is that when you've experienced betrayal, when you've been abused, when you've experienced neglect, that shame is what makes us feel unworthy of being heard, unworthy of being loved, because we carry the shame because we maybe one allowed those bad things to happen. I know certainly this was for me. I carried so much shame for having been sexually abused. I carried shame that sat there. It wasn't, even though I knew it wasn't my fault, or we could look at, I mean, all of those things in terms of scenarios or the storyline behind the sexual abuse. So even though I could rationalize that in the logical mind, it didn't take away the shame that I carried for what had happened, the shame of the experience itself. And so here it not only led to the depth of feeling of, unworthy, and needing to hold back and not speak my truth, and keep secrets that were not mine to keep secrets, because that fear of exposing myself, because I was so deeply ashamed as to what had happened. So there is an internalized blame. So even though, like I said, we can tell ourselves that the experience was not our fault, or that that even, we still carry it. It's still there. It still is created within us from the experience. And I think often, and I see this so much within the women that I've coached over the years, and through looking at some of the deeper healing intensives that we've done together, we're often we hold back on expressing our truth or talking about the things that happen to us, and again, happen to us not just out there in the bigger scope of the world, but even in intimate circles or with friends or a therapist, or we hold on to that because of what's running underneath here, because it one of the things is there's a belief that our pain isn't significant enough. I want you to just sit with that. The belief system that says my pain is not significant enough. We talk a lot about on the show about not feeling good enough, not, being enough of something. And we also have, especially when we carry deep wounds associated to trauma and deep life altering experiences inside of us, that our pain isn't significant enough to share. And it can be one of the things that brings us into further silence, where we believe other people's pain and suffering is greater than ours. So again, this is where we can go back to other conversations that I've had here of how trauma is judged, whether it's a big T trauma or a little T trauma. And I don't agree with that whatsoever, because the emotional impact, the emotional and energetic impact, let me correct that, of the experience is just as meaningful and is very similar, and has the exact same effect on our psyche, the exact same effect on our system, our nervous system, as any trauma or experience in life. So it's not about the thing that happened. It's not about what happened. It's about how what happened made us feel, and what happened made us believe about ourself or our worthiness in life. And we all have that. It's a part of what's in that sits within this very scope of this human condition. This that we're all human. We all have this consciousness that is a part of, what is a container, we can say, for experiences, karmic and otherwise, in this life. So it's a part of that. So but we judge our pain, we judge the things that have happened, the violations, the violence, the what we've witnessed, direct or indirectly. All of those things are factors which make it these belief systems, as I said, that our pain isn't as significant as others, and so we hold on to it. So the shame creates a barrier, whispering to ourselves in that our story, our experience, or how we feel isn't valid. And then sometimes it's also that this is going to make other people too uncomfortable to hear what how I feel. It's going to make other people too uncomfortable to share my beliefs with them. And so that judgment, one, of other people, what they're going to think about us, and two, the very fact that we unconsciously go into protecting others because it's going to be too uncomfortable for someone else to hear. All of those factors really are what lead to silence. So it's like everything's reinforced, though. Gets reinforced from there. And it gets reinforced from there, from the internal voice, that mind, that mental chatter that goes on again, where that moves us into questioning, to question whether it's safe for us to share our truth. Is it worth the risk of sharing our truth? And I've seen this happen time and time again, as I said, in the work that I do in supporting women to heal beyond those traumas. Even most recently through another program that I was facilitating, which is a part of an anthology of helping women to bring in their story, to express their truth, and to put their wisdom into words so that they can help other people. But there is this worth the risk? Because what goes on is that, this fear of, what if they judge me? Will I be now rejected by my family, by my friends, by my community, for how I really feel, for what I truly believe? So all of that mental noise, which is fueled here again by fear and doubts and insecurities, create this paralysis, a paralysis for us to take action. This can even play out in for those of you who are listening, that maybe are mediums and psychics and mystics in the world, who have this phenomenal connection with the non-physical, who feel this deep compulsion to help other people through your gifts, talents, and abilities. There is that mental noise, that fear, that risk that's involved, that speaking of truth, because of the paradigms, the belief systems, the collective unconsciousness, the fear consciousness, all of what sits there within the paradigms, is what creates that paralysis in taking action to launch the business, to have the website, to do the speaking events, whatever it is, because those internalized fears paralyze us. And what I'm referring here to is the way that feelings of fear, of shame, and doubt can stop us from taking action towards the very thing that we feel so passionate about, which may be helping others through that connection to the unseen world. The fear of taking the steps towards sharing our story, expressing our feelings, admitting to other people that this is who we are. Like, I'm a medium and I'm very proud of being a medium, but it took me a lot of work and a lot of years to get to the place where I could just be fully in that, 2 feet in, and to say, this is who God created me to be. I understand and know that it may not be acceptable and vastly, I would say, rejected by society. Not all of society, but there's a vast amount of people who still are who don't believe that it's possible, or who can judge and also think that the frauds and we're making it up, and I could go on and on and on. I cover that in my mediumship programs when I'm working and mentoring other mediums, just looking at all of those things that are a part of that consciousness that prevents us from speaking our truth. Because we go into this, there's emotional pain. There is all of the insecurities that here. We're afraid of the reaction, the rejection, all of those things that are there, that it feels unsafe for us to open up. Unsafe, it feels safer to stay quiet than what it feels to express our truth. So how does this all, what does this cause for us? Well, this causes this complexity, these emotional barriers that I spoke about earlier, all of those things. And I've worked with a lot of, like I said, a lot of different women, a lot of diverse experiences and stories, and we could say even abilities in the world that so feel like they don't have the choice to express their truth. And the truth is, we have a choice to express our truth, or we have the choice to stay silent. And often because it is a result of the fact of, as I said, that rejection, that judgment, that what's going to happen, or the impact of us sharing our truth, the impact of what that's going to have on others. Because, and then it just goes, it is safer for me to stay quiet. It is safer for me to live over here in the shadows and staying silent, not speaking my truth, than what it is for me to risk everything and everyone in my life. And again, I know that so well. I know that so well. But this really is what creates this freeze experience. Freeze, be quiet, stay small. And it really is what creates this, as I said, this paralysis, where one, it might create a paralysis from seeking the support that you might require and need in order for you to heal and process and move through these deeper layers of what sits inside of you. It can prevent people from standing up for themselves, from implementing boundaries in their life, and also from what is embracing their authentic voice, their authentic expression of who they truly are at the core. That authenticity, like as I said, for me, this is the scope of being a medium. It's not just something I do. Being a medium is who I am. It's a part of my personality. It's a part of my authenticity. It's a part of what is my voice. I can't run away from myself, right? So there is the massive amount of work that it takes, and it is, and I say massive because there's a lot to unravel here. But I also want you to know that even though there is a dedication and commitment to doing this deeper work, through processing the grip that our traumas, our pain, and our wounds have on us, the contingent belief systems and paradigms that are a part of those influencing factors, to unravel the inherited conditioning and take a look at all of those things that have that sit within our experience here, even within the karmic aspects of things. There's a lot that's involved. But I can tell you this, that wherever you are in your life today, wherever you're sitting in your life today, that it's taking you this long to get to this point, this long in maybe listening to the show for the first time, or hearing this information for the first time, where we get to this certain point in our life. And it doesn't matter if you're 20, if you're 30, if you're 45, if you're 60, if you're 80 and you're tuning in and listening to this, it doesn't matter at what stage of life that you're in. Just know this: it's taken you a lot longer to get to this point than what it will to unravel and heal and move through all of that. That's it. The distance is really short. And if you've tuned into my show before, you know how I've said awareness is everything. It can take forever, what can seem like forever, to get to a point where we have awareness to the fact that we're worthy of more, the awareness to the fact that we're a spiritual being having a human experience. It takes us a long time based on a lot of, the complexities and what we're here to maybe even resolve on that karmic level. So it takes awareness for awareness to be born. There's a lot of time that can happen. There's a lot of experiences that can play out to wake us up. But once the awareness happens, we are far over halfway on the journey. We're far over halfway. Awareness, it takes so much to create awareness. But once we have awareness, now we have the power. Now we get to begin to choose. Now we get to take action. Now we go into commitment. And now we go into those deeper spaces inside of us that maybe we haven't wanted to look at before. But that period of time through what feels like we could call it the dark night of the soul, or whatever the experience is in that it's so much shorter in when we look at timeline of what it's taken us to reach the point of where we are when we wake up, the point of the awareness. So that's the good news in all of this. So yes, there is a lot of work. There is a lot of considerations and things to look at, but it also is the opening and pathway. These are, I always look at all of these painful experiences, these things that have happened are all portals. They are portals for transformation. They are portals for us to know and recognize who we truly are. They are portals for us to understand the depth of our worthiness at a much deeper level. They are portals for healing. And so we look at awareness. These is that birthing of and that opening of the portal that says, and now you're ready. And now you're ready. And as I said, the good news is it doesn't take as much time to get through the mess of it as what it took and led up to us getting there. Okay. So, all right. Coming back to our conversation. Let's talk about this deepen this web of emotional barrier, right? So again, this is what is to understand that these fears and doubts don't exist on their own. There's an entire network that's a part of the equation, an entire network of things. And what I mean by that is that our mind and the subconscious belief systems that we hold, the limiting belief systems that create and are tied to the fear, are a network of belief systems that are held within a deeper belief of something that sits at our core that really becomes the thing that we pull out and unravels everything associated with it. So, for example of this, I think this is a way I can explain this even better, is that if you are someone who fears rejection, okay, you have a fear of rejection. But what happens with that fear of rejection, I will be rejected, I am rejected. All of those things can constitute from the fear of rejection. I'm not good enough. My point of view isn't valid. All of those, there's a cumbersome of things that you can probably just within your own self begin to look at. What does fear of rejection represent? It's not safe to speak my truth is a belief system. I had, here's one recently that I uncovered within myself. Remember, I'm on this journey. I am constantly, I mean, yes, I'm sitting here week after week and having these conversations with you, but I'm also an active participant in my life and looking to unravel what else is sitting there for me. What else do I need to shift and understand? What else is required of me in order to continue forward on my healing journey? Because it is, I mean, we never get it done. That's the reality of this, my friends. Here's the truth bomb. We're always going to have something we need to attend to. So we want to take care of the bigger complexities of things, and then we have all of these finite points that come up along the journey. But we continue to, at least I would say we do, and I would say I do, and I know many, many people who do, who are very conscientious of ensuring that we're taking care of what's ours, so that we can continue to have the joy, the well-being, the abundance, the health, mental, emotional, physical health associated and under, and connected to those belief systems. So one of them that came up for me recently was I had a fear that in speaking my truth, in expressing my voice, in sharing my story, and maybe it's even when we say sharing story is even about coming on here week after week, continuing to do the work that I do in the world. All of that can be a part of it. That I had a fear that I was going to blow up my family. So I was shocked by it because wow, that's been running within my system. That's been running. It's a fear that's been holding me back, limiting me, and preventing me from really fully expressing my truth, really fully expressing my voice, my message into the world. So, where did that come from? The fear of blowing up my family came from this realization that I was still running within this internalization, this fear of rejection. Okay? So, fear of rejection. So I fear I'm going to blow up my family. I'm going to be rejected by my family. I'm going all of those things that come, rejected by my husband, rejected by my kids, rejected by my grandbabies. Let me go on and on and on. In whatever aspect that family exists. And so this was running in the underbelly of the subconscious. But this is like a fear A, the fear of rejection. We're going to call it fear A, because fear A is running with this entire network of belief systems tied to it, which then creates this internalized shame, this internalized experience. So fear can lead to shame, being ashamed of who we are, being ashamed of how we feel, being ashamed of what's happened to us, which is how we unconsciously convince ourselves that our feelings are invalid, which is belief B. So, belief A says this fear of rejection with this whole network of belief systems that has this belief B that says that our feelings are invalid. And so because of those feelings of being ashamed, that means that we could be less likely seeking help. It reinforces isolation, staying in the closet in terms of admitting who we are or expressing that deeper truth inside of us. And so it creates this tight knit ball where fear and shame, societal expectations, and our past trauma feeds into the emotional barriers, which makes it even harder and maybe more rigid, we could say, to begin to dismantle. So here again, it can be all consuming. And again, we can avoid situations where we might need to be vulnerable, or being vulnerable is what is really going to help us to grow, to heal, to have even authentic connections with other people in our lives. I know this was certainly for me, and even with some of what I would have called my closest friends, it was still limited because I was limited out of the internal fears and those belief systems that where I avoided that vulnerability. So it's this self-perpetuated cycle, right? It's like fear and shame and all of these things that make it increasingly difficult for us to speak our truth. But here's the good news. You're tuning into the show. You're beginning to recognize and kind of take a look at what the interconnected system is all about here. And even that, again, awareness, it begins to loosen some of that web. It begins to open up the pathways where we can maybe nurture ourselves. We can challenge the fears that are coming up, that we can move into a place of where we are taking action to speak our truth, to really cultivate inside of us the courage to speak our truth from that deeper place of worthiness inside of us. Okay. All right. Excuse me. Okay, I also want to look at speaking truth, not just from the emotional and mind place of the human self, but I also want to take a look at it from the energetic sensitive, right? Because you're tuning into my show, which means that you are someone who is extremely sensitive to the spirit world, sensitive to the energy of the world, the empathic aspect that exists inside of you. And so here we need to also look at this from the energetic perspective as well. So we look at what's unspoken, what's being held in silence, what is perpetuating within the belief systems that we hold. The very fact that the energy of it has a toxicity, and that toxicity is what impacts our mind on how we think and what we believe about ourselves. That toxicity affects our body, what goes on within the body. We could say the body in the physicality of it, the toxicity that rules or governs our nervous system. why we react in the way that we do, because it's there. And also looking at it in terms of that spirit, how it affects the impact it has on our spirit as well. So here, when we look at the emotion, emotion is energy in motion, which means that when we have barriers of fear and shame, when it's been unexpressed, unresolved, it accumulates. It accumulates within us. We could call it negative energy. We could call it stagnant energy. And when that energy is left unchecked, unattended to, we've absorbed it, taking it on, holding it, even in terms of being an empath or a sensitive in the world, it disrupts the flow of our vitality and our well-being. It's toxic. It's like poison in our system. And over time, left unattended to, can create a lot of unnecessary, we could say, suffering. We've suffered already, but we're holding on to the suffering. And when we hold on to the suffering, we're holding on to the toxic energy. And when we're holding on to the toxic energy, it's perpetuating the cycles of suffering. So energetic blocks, stagnation. This is, again, we can look at what's sitting within the auric field, what's in the electromagnetic shield that is in the world that exists around you. So when we suppress our feelings and keep our stories hidden, we're holding on to that unresolved emotional energy. That's creating blocks in our energy field. That means that there are knots and more knots and more knots that are restricting what is our of the vital life force energy, which is known as our prana or our chi. And over time, that begins to manifest in terms of complications, in terms of physically, energetically, as well as spiritually. Okay. So it's sitting in our energy field, and it's sitting there, whether it's, of us or a part of us, from us, or the outside world, doesn't matter. It's unresolved. We can even look at unresolved emotional energy of the collective unconsciousness. All of that, especially for the energy sensitive, it's sitting in our field. And so over time, it does affect us. So one, it really exasperates the mind. What I mean by this means that it is the very thing that is behind the accumulation of what we're suppressing. It is the persistent mental chatter, that inner critic. It's fueling the inner critic. And so it keeps us in negative thought patterns. It keeps us in self doubt. It's the very thing that creates anxiety, because it's a persistent block of energy that's vibrating within a lower frequency, which means that we have a frequency of a mindset that's rooted in fear and distrust. So that makes it really difficult to have solution, to speak our truth, and what causes us to further stay silent. So we can look at it is what it exasperates or fuels of the internal conflict of the mind, the decision making, our thought systems, and of course, feeding those negative beliefs we have about ourselves. So it's the unresolved emotional residue that begins to impact the mind. In the body, now this is, again, it doesn't stay confined in the subtle realm. It influences our physical health. It influences our nervous system, our capacity. We would say what fuels the triggers. What fuels the triggers is this energetic blockage, is this energetic imbalance that's sitting there, that what's rooted and tangled and holding on to those experiences. And so it's influencing our nervous system, our ability to regulate in the body, to feel safe, to feel grounded within ourselves, within our lives. And it influences our physical health, which, again, that nervous system, when it's running with stress of the unprocessed trauma, when it's running with the stress of shame, it begins to create headaches and tension, digestive issues, chronic fatigue. It's a stagnation of energy that hampers the body's ability and nervous system to maintain balance. So it weakens the immune system, and it creates all kinds of things, right? Which really, again, and I'm going to say here again, when we're holding feelings of betrayal. That's tightness in the chest. It's when we can't breathe and when we feel confined, there's an emotional constriction in our heart space, in our heart chakra. And we can look at it in the survival mode, right? When we look at the root chakra, when we think of that's our fear, that's our survival, that's our, and those are instincts inside of us. That too can lead to issues with kidneys, with bladder. Okay, so it all sits there. I'm not going to get into the intricacies of what all of the different feelings lead to or how they impact the physical body, but I'm telling you, it's amazing in what it does. As an example, I just did in that deeper work of, as I said, where I was afraid of blowing up my family. Some deeper work in that is in making a decision when I was 8 years old to hate myself. And so that hate was running, but that hate was energy in my gallbladder that was affecting everything else in my system. So it sits there. It is, again, whether we are consciously aware of it or unconsciously aware of it, it's an energy that exists, a stagnation of energy that hampers the body's ability to thrive. And then it has impacts on our spirit as well. So it creates this disconnection from our higher self, from our higher wisdom, from having a sense of purpose, because we're dealing with feelings that are about emptiness, disconnection, loss. And all of that diminishes or acts like the veil between worlds, between the physical and non-physical world, a veil that dims our light, making it even difficult for us to receive our own guidance, whether that be from your higher self, from your angels, your guides, your loved ones on the other side. There's a disconnection that really leads to this numbness, which means it makes it even more challenging for us to have the courage, to find the courage, to cultivate the strength, and through the worthiness to speak and live from this authentic place inside of us. Okay. So, when we look at, well, how do we move forward from this? Okay, we understand where it comes from, what it's all about. And I would say, number one, it is about sharing our stories. It is about speaking our truth. It is about, even if speaking your truth doesn't necessarily mean that you're speaking it to someone else, you might be expressing it to your own self. Even sitting down and writing and sitting down and journaling and allowing yourself to get into the rawness, the messiness, the ugly that might exist inside of you in what you think or believe about yourself, or even being able to write about these terrible things that have happened to you. And this isn't about sharing that story with anyone else. It's about using your own voice, which is revolutionary, and using your voice even through journaling, being able to you know give voice is what adds to your own resilience. Now, resilience is, I mean, I've talked about it previously on the show. I'm just doing this amazing anthology called Elevated Resilience with a group of powerful women who are using their voice in this way, speaking their stories. And as they're speaking their stories, and they've been writing about this, and even if you're doing journaling on your own, you begin to dismantle the belief systems that are intertwined within that network I talked about earlier. Because everything that's said is not safe to share, it's not safe to speak my truth, or there's fear of being rejected. Even if you're writing for yourself, you are dismantling the belief system. So I really encourage you to grab a journal, set time aside, and go into your own heart space and write about the stories and get it out of you. Because as you're writing these words, as you're expressing this, you are clearing out the toxic energy that is getting in the way of of your chi, of your vital life force energy that's supporting you to have vitality in your life. Okay, so look to writing. Now, you might also want to have honest conversations with people. Of course, that's always great. Whether that's a friend, whether that's that you're looking at working with a professional healer, whether you are looking to work with me in some way, having space to be able to express our truth without fear or judgment or repercussion is such an important part of this. So here again, this is, look at, and maybe it is about having an honest conversation, maybe even an honest conversation with a friend where there is challenge, where you can share. I know this was so helpful for me in some of the complexities of some of my friendships, where I started to come out about, my trauma and my story, and began to share about it, where they said, "How come you never told me? In all the years that I've known you, you never told me." And so I needed to have an honest conversation, one I apologized, because, I mean, really, who sits down for coffee and says, "Hey, do you want to hear about this horrible stuff that happened to me in my life?" You kind of don't do that, right? But it was just, and also, but taking a look and having the honest conversation about, yes, these things that happened, and why I maybe wasn't the greatest friend in the relationship, or what I needed to apologize for, etc. And having that can also, again, allows us to begin to express our truth, to begin to have the hard conversations where we take ownership for our role in the relationship, and we apologize. We apologize if our words or our actions made anyone else feel like they were unworthy, or that we didn't care about them, or maybe they were unkind and cruel, and we need to attend to that. And as we're doing that, then we're not withholding anymore, but we're recognizing that this is an expression of words that allows us to be very mindful in our communication, but it's also helping us to set boundaries or express boundaries within relationships as well. So it's such an important thing. But when we look at speaking our truth, this is healing. It begins to dismantle. Giving voice to things is such an important thing, because we begin to eradicate that internal shame, and instead we bring in what spiritual pride is. And spiritual pride is not ego pride. It's not boastful and says, "Look at me and I'm speaking my truth." No, no, no. It's this humble pride that allows us to feel proud of who we are, irregardless of the imperfections and where we may be messed up in our life, right? Because we've attended to what needed to be attended to. We begin dismantling, unraveling things. I also, before we go here and wrap up today, I want to say, what can really help here. Yes, sharing our stories, it creates a ripple effect. It allows for solidarity. We express vulnerability. We find a sense of belonging, when we start being vulnerable in our relationships. But further to that, looking at expressing that toxic energy, I want to take you to your throat chakra. Your throat chakra, which sits in your throat. Of course, this is so great for helping in terms of articulating, of being able to, as I said, to do that journaling, to share your feelings with trusted friends, to engage in those honest conversations. As you go into that, work with your throat chakra. And this can be very intentional. It's about setting the intention for the throat chakra to clear as you're singing to your favorite songs, as you're chanting mantras, as you are reciting affirmations out loud. Those vibrations, that of you vocalizing in some way with the intention to heal any imbalances within your throat chakra, is going to help and activate and clear the throat chakra. It's going to help to open it up. This is also where breath work is such a great, oh my gosh, it's such a great form of healing for us. And also looking at expressing breath work here, that exercises that focus on the throat area. So for example, in that, breathing deeply through your nose, filling your lungs, exhaling out your mouth. Consciously in through your nose, inhale, and then exhale out your mouth is what helps to release tension in the throat chakra. It helps to begin to clear out some of the energetic imbalances that may be preventing you from expressing your feelings, from expressing that toxicity that you're holding within your system. Okay. And again, looking at gratitude. Oh my gosh, you've heard me time and time again talking on this show. Gratitude is everything, and it's more than just an attitude. We need a bigger than our attitude of gratitude, although it's great to have an attitude of gratitude. However, that also is about regularly expressing gratitude. That helps to clear our ability to communicate, to be heard. It fosters positive relationship with our voice, as well as positive relationship with other people. Gratitude is everything. The energy of gratitude is one of the most powerful antidotes for what has been silence. So letting yourself express gratitude, not just writing it down. Writing it down is great. You write those gratitude lists out. Keep a gratitude journal. I'm all for that. But what I'm saying here is using your voice to express gratitude, whether you are singing in prayer and invoking a gratitude prayer out loud, whether you are speaking gratitude and acknowledgement and being grateful for the people who are in your life, for your family, for your spouse, for your children, letting them know how grateful you are to have them, so grateful for the relationship you have, so grateful for the honest communication, anything you can do. That energy of gratitude is one of the most powerful anecdotes. We could call it sacred medicine in helping you to express your truth. All right, sweet friends. Well, I'm hoping that something today on the show is really going to help you to dissolve those blockages so that you can really move into your capacity for authentic expression. Remember that you are worthy, you are deserving, and what has happened to you in the past are experiences that happened, but they do not make you who you are. Who you are is something so much greater than that. So thank you so much for tuning in. Until next week, bye for now.